Hey, Daniel. Yes, fats. Yes, femmes. Yes, Asians. No purple people, though. Just purples. So I tried to edit this down to fit within the time, but this is from a longer essay called After the Honeymoon Phase. When we were children, my best friend Danae and I were obsessed with made-for-TV movies that aired on the Lifetime channel. Fine selections such as Co-Ed Call Girl, Baby Monitor, Sound of Fear, and Mother, May I Sleep with Danger. The hyperbolic titles were amusing enough, but it was the world of these movies that fascinated us. In My Stepson, My Lover, a woman has an affair with her husband's son from another marriage after discovering her husband lied about wanting to start a family. In Twisted Desire, Melissa Joan Hart gets an ex-con to kill her parents, then sells them out to the cops in an elaborate ruse to get back with her ex-boyfriend, all because mommy and daddy wouldn't let her go to a concert. The characters of made-for-TV movie occupied a universe filled with excessive face-slapping and blazing house fires that they seemed cursed to only make bad decisions. As angsty teenagers, they made Danae and I feel great about our own lives. We traded movie recommendations the way other teens gossiped about their friends. Oh my God, Danae gushed. Tiffany Amber Thiessen, who is Kelly Kapowski on Saved by the Bell, is in a new made-for-TV movie based on a true story about a small-town slut that gets raped by a football player and no one believes her, not even her mom. It's called She Fought Alone because she has to fight the town alone. I'm so sorry, trigger warning. Abuse in all its forms. But Danae and I extracted very different meanings from these movies. I looked to them the way a child might absorb morals from fairy tales. In The Three Little Pigs, you're taught that putting in hard work will result in something sturdy that can withstand catastrophe. Cinderella espouses that being persistent and virtuous will lead you out of poverty. And Death of a Cheerleader taught me that you should never kill anyone, even if they are an asshole in the form of Tori Spelling. While I favored made-for-TV movies about teens in crisis, Danae gravitated towards stories of women in peril. From mothers who married serial killers to chemistry teachers being stalked by their students, these characters inspired Danae to resist being a victim, kicking and clawing back against all obstacles. But Danae also looked to them as role models on how to orchestrate her life. In the 8th grade, she wrote a manifesto of how she would marry and divorce 3 different men in her lifetime. By the time we were adults, she was calling me up for advice on more complicated situations. 2 of my coworkers are really into me, she said. They're both best friends and roommate, and they don't want the other to know. Which one should I sleep with first? Neither, I said. Don't complicate things like that. If you want to move past the sexual tension, you should either avoid them or directly communicate what your boundaries are. This became our ritual. Danae would seek my advice for problems I thought had easy choices. And if Danae was hell-bent on whipping up as much drama in her personal life as possible, I would have none of it in mind. As an adult, I was inspired by teens in crisis enough that I entered the health sector, working for a nonprofit that contracted me out as a counselor to underfunded schools around San Francisco. I trained with a mentor named Rachel, a vegan who wore muslin pants, worshiped Mother Gaia, and spoke in a soothing voice, stalling between phrases as if in contemplation of her brilliance. During a group training on the cycle of abuse, Rachel gestured towards a circular diagram divided into 4 quadrants projected onto the wall.
First comes the tension-building phase, where the victim feels compelled to placate their abuser. Stage 2 is the incident, where the abuser acts out physically or verbally. Third is the reconciliation, where the abuser apologizes or makes the victim believe it is their fault. Then stage 4 is the calm, or what we call the honeymoon phase.
For years, I taught teenagers how to be more in touch with their emotions, how to act on positive intent, and to identify disruptors to their own unhealthy habits, skills that helped foster my own love life. In my 20s, I had a winning streak of long-term relationships, all of which ended amicably. A tragic death in the family forced David to move out of state to take care of his widowed mother. Chris couldn't find a job in the Bay Area, and so he had to stay on the East Coast. And then there was Coy. I ended up with Coy probably the same way Danae ended up in all her situations. You meet a man who is charming, who seems attentive to your needs, who makes you feel attractive, and then you lose all sense of who you are. It's not that he started off abusive. Like most toxic relationships, it happened over time after the honeymoon phase. He started by picking fights if I chose to hang out with friends for dinner. Once I woke in the middle of the night to see him going through the text messages on my phone because he was convinced I was secretly dating someone behind his back. Once I returned to my desk from a meeting at work to find 7 voicemails, each progressively more heated, accusing me of ignoring him and cursing me out because I clearly lied about going into the office that day. When I asked him to stop hacking into my email account, he threw all my clothes into a garbage bag and tossed it out the window of his apartment. Soon, Coy was breaking up with me every other week, then would scream at me for my indifference if I didn't chase after him, begging him to take me back. One of the most satisfying things about watching a Lifetime movie is the superiority you feel as a voyeur, yelling at the protagonist through the TV screen for all their mistakes. If I watched the way Coy shoved the made-for-TV movie version of myself down the stairs, I would have smugly said, "Bitch, why'd you get back with him to begin with?" But I didn't need some meta-level perspective to recognize what was going on. I could hold my own relationship to the cycle of abuse diagram and graph the movement of his fury. And yet, I stayed. I stayed because I thought I could right that ship. I stayed because, like myself, his family were Vietnamese refugees. I needed to validate the fact that our people pass down our trauma through our veins so that for generations our emotions come out sideways. I stayed because I was a counselor who was convinced that I had the tools to steel myself, to weather this relationship and not be a victim. I wasn't Candace Cameron and no one would tell, right? And yet there I was, not telling anyone what I was going through. It took me nearly 2 years to leave him, and during those 2 years, I learned how to buy bouquets of flower, each destined to wither and die, which I offered to him as apologies every time he judo flipped the situation by getting angry at me for getting angry at him to begin with. Still, I have PTSD from memories of that relationship, memories that embarrass me, make me feel ashamed for not helping myself. If Lifetime were to make a movie about me, it would be called Girl, You Don't Love Yourself, the Danny Ngyuen story, starring Scarlett Johansson. When I was still training to be a counselor, Rachel asked the class,
After breaking from this cycle, how long do you suppose it takes for the victim to recover from their experiences?
One participant in the training raised their hand. Depends on the type of abuse and how long it lasted, she said. Another person said, depends on the support they receive afterward.
Danny,
Rachel asked.
what do you think?
I didn't know how to respond then, and I don't know now. The answer is yet to find me.